Experience can serve as a guiding principle of discovering your passion and leveling the playing field in determining how you want to make the most impactful difference. For Tony Curl, he spent over 30 years in the retail sector, managing teams as large as 300 people and budgets and revenues up to $300 million. During his time in operational leadership, Curl discovered that he had a passion for helping others reach their fullest potential in business and in life, which prompted him to become a business coach. Now, as an accredited coach, Curl helps hundreds of business leaders in all sectors achieve and exceed their business goals and objectives. He joined me this week to have a conversation about business diversification, leadership, and succeeding in business. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Absolutely. So, Tony, if you're ready, I'm excited to be with you this afternoon. I guess in your case it would be morning, but I'm excited to be with you today to learn all about your career in business. Always great to see you, and thanks so very much for being here.
It's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while.
Yeah, as have I. You know, Tony, I know that you've spent over 30 years in entrepreneurship and retail. And I know that you've had some very valuable lessons in business. So I'm wondering if you can tell me, what do you think is the most valuable lessons you've learned in business over your 30 years of experience?
Well, I think running businesses, you have this concept called people, right? So I think the largest lessons that I've ever learned is how you engage, inspire, and empower people. And I think to be profitable in any sort of business means you need to have teams that are working together to hit a common goal, so that you've got teams that are working together. And there's a number of really key lessons that I learned about working with teams and managing people. One of the first ones, Kevin, is not to surround yourself with people that are like me. So whenever I had a team that was like me, it was odds on that we were not going to get the results that we could have got. And what I mean by that is that I'm a relatively a big picture person, and if I'm surrounded by big people, big picture people, what it often means is that we've got no one there doing the work, and that's what we need. So I found the best teams that I worked with or that I led were people that had complementary skills, that they complemented each other. There was open, transparent communication. And that's built from the space of psychological safety and having trust in each other. There's two-way feedback in place so people can feel comfortable to talk about things. Because as a leader, you need to have vibrant discussions. You need to have people say, I'm not sure that's the way to go. You just can't have people blindly follow you. So you need to create that environment. So one of the really big things that I learned was that it's the leader's responsibility to create the environment where people feel trusted, to be heard, and it's only then that you're truly going to get the ideas or the opinions that you need to hear to make your business successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of your journey in business has helped you ignite your passion for teaching others to maximize their potential in business, and I know that was part of the reason you wanted to become a professional coach. So tell me about your desire
Yeah.
to help others succeed in business.
Yeah, Kevin, I get a real buzz, and I still do with retail. Like I would call myself a bit of a retail nerd, to be honest. I love going looking at new retail concepts. When we visited the United States, for example, one of my biggest things was to get out there in the shopping centers and have a look at some of these major brands that I've read about and heard about for all these years. So I've always had a buzz out of retail, but probably in the back quarter of my 30-year retail career, I was, and it was initially fueled by my own self-development, in all honesty. I started to get real satisfaction in helping support others take the next steps or take the required movements that they needed to have in their career. And I really started to get a real kick out of that. So I still got a kick out of retail, but I was getting this kick that I never ever thought that I would get by helping develop, coach, and inspire others to take the next step. And that prompted me to join the John Maxwell team and become certified as a leadership coach through them. And in 2013, I kicked off my own business as a professional coach. And I guess since then, I've helped probably over 200 leaders, I would imagine, and probably the same amount of businesses get better at what it is that they do. I've served them in helping them achieve either their career goals or their business goals. And so I still get a kick out of it. And I'm so glad that I took that step.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, what do you think is the biggest key to helping leaders sort of maximize their potential and realize their goals in both life and in business?
Yeah. And once again, when I'm working with a leader, and the biggest thing I've got to do is create that trusted environment for open communication. A lot of people are guarded in what they say. If I've been called in to help someone, help a leader in an organization, often that leader will think that I'm reporting back to the organization, when fundamentally the coaching is completely confidential. But I've got to create that trusted environment. And what we often determine is that, potential is limited by the goals that we're setting ourselves. So if you've got no goals, you're going to drift through the day. You're just going to get out of bed whenever you feel it's the right time, and you'll just drift. And the world's full of too many drifters, as we know, Kevin. So, but to me, I think it's always, we start with goals and we start with vision. Now, a lot of leaders will talk to me and say that their goal is to take the next step up the corporate ladder. And fundamentally, that's what I would call a surface level career goal. And, it's fair enough to have that. No, I mean, I'm not saying don't have that. I'm saying have that. But at the end of the day, there's parts of that goal that is out of your control. Someone above you has to identify your potential and help you get that next level of goal. Of course, there's things that you can be doing, which is going to be the best leader being the best leader that you can be. But ultimately, there's things outside. But when I start talking to leaders about what is their vision for themselves as a leader, what I start to see is we start to get a bit deeper. And, John Maxwell talks about the legacy that we all have as a leader. What's the legacy that we're going to leave? People are going to sum you up in one sentence, choose it now. So I start in that space. So I really start with, what is the legacy that you want to be remembered for? So whether it's when you pass away or when you leave an organization, what do you want people to say about you? And then that starts the process of helping them understand that having long-term goals and having long-term vision helps determine the amount of effort that you do on a short term. So it helps you on a daily basis because you're working towards something. So I think that's the key. If people want to maximize their potential, they've got to understand who it is that they want to become long-term and have that as their major internal inspiration to keep going.
Yeah, Tony, and I'm also curious to ask you, about business diversification and using it as a competitive advantage. in the space of infusing individuals with disabilities into the workforce. I was born with cerebral palsy, and one of my missions in life is to make sure that folks with all sorts of disabilities have equal access to equitable employment. So I'm curious to get your perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the world of business for individuals with disabilities.
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin, I can only really speak from my experience and what I've seen in the workplace. But I have my own podcast called the Today's Leader podcast, and this year particularly, we've had featured a number of guests around the D&I, the diversity and inclusion space. And I think what we're able to do with that is open up the awareness for this with leaders everywhere, the importance of diversity and inclusive, and what I would call inclusive practices. And from a personal experience, where I saw this play out most particularly, especially in the disability space, is that we had programs in one of the big box retailers that I worked with, and we were active in providing employment opportunities within the disability sector. And many of them would go on to full-time employment. There was a time where I employed a paraplegic at one of my stores to operate and work on our trade desk. He was a qualified tradesperson, and unfortunately an accident had left him in a wheelchair. So his skills were evident in helping the customer base. And it was just the right move and the right decision. But one of the things where I see the competitive advantage really starting to kick in to this space is the culture that it breeds within the store or within the business. And the couple of things that become evident, obviously the skill set and the mindset that a lot of people will bring. So people with disabilities I suppose I see them as being very much more determined to complete and achieve things. And that rubs off on everyone that they're working with. There's this determination that they want to do the right thing. There's this real attitude that they're part of the team. They want to be part of the team. And what I've seen happen with them, and this is where the competitive advantage or the business differentiation really starts to kick in. Your team all around, whenever you have these inclusive practices, embraces it. There's a care, there's a curiosity, there's compassion, and all of that rubs off on how people serve whoever their client or their customer is. So I think it's not just a topic around skills, because skills is definitely part of it. You want people with the right skills, whoever they may be. So, and a lot of people in the disability or the diversity space have those skill sets. So they're bringing those skills with them. But the end result that we often see is a more engaged team, a more compassionate team, a more caring team, because of what they bring into that team. I think all my experiences have been incredibly inspirational whenever we've had people with disability join any of our teams. It's just been such a caring process, and that helps you serve the customer in so many better ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And more broadly, Tony, for your own personal experience, how do you think you've best gauge sort of your own personal fulfillment and growth individually?
Yeah, early days in my career, Kevin, I've got to be honest, I really didn't embrace the concept of personal growth. I just thought you had to work harder than the next person to get ahead. But I started reading. Initially, I started reading John Maxwell books, and I started reading about leadership. And, one of the books that had a really big impact with me was Stephen Covey's The Speed of Trust. And I started to apply some of the techniques that I was reading about. So I could see the difference that it was making within the people that I led, within the way that as a leader, I was feeling I was more engaged in the process. So my ongoing professional and personal development has really stemmed from those days. And, I can thank a $2 bargain book that I picked up of John Maxwell that got all that started. But the common purpose for me, how do I gauge it, is that I want to continue to get better. I want to continue to challenge my own way of thinking. I want to help people not make the mistakes that I made, or at the very least, make them feel that they're not alone in their career or their leadership journeys. I love being challenged and stretched. And once again, when I speak to some of the global experts that I have on my podcast, I get stretched and challenged each and every day. And if I don't approach those conversations with an open mind and the capacity to be challenged, they're going to be horrible conversations. But I love being challenged. I love being stretched. And I guess that's how I gauge my own personal and professional development. I want to be challenged. I want to be stretched. At times, I want to be really incredibly uncomfortable. And I want to keep getting better and have a broader view of the world every single day. If I'm doing that on a daily basis, I'm progressing.
Yeah, and Tony, I'm also curious to ask you about your definition of core leadership and how do you think it's evolved over the years?
Yeah, the core of leadership is a really good subject to speak about, because I think the core of leaders can be defined really quite simply. John Maxwell talks about the character, and I sort of take it a little bit further, because I think the core of leadership incorporates three things. It incorporates character, of course. It encapsulates our own credibility as a leader, and it also captures our calling. So whatever we're called to do, whatever our purpose is, it's part of the core of leadership. So people with strong characters, strong values base, will often become much admired leaders, because they're true to their word, they're strong in their convictions. People that can walk the talk, do perform, do the job, will get credibility. They have that credibility factor, which enables them to have that strength of the core of their leadership. And when they're called to a higher purpose, or a bigger purpose, or a purpose that's bigger than themselves, that's also part of the what I see as the core of leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tony, with your experience in retail, I'm also curious to ask you about the role that technology has played and how it has replaced or strengthened the value of human capital. What are your thoughts on that discussion?
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion, Kevin, because a lot of people see that technology is removing the need for people. And I can see that there's Amazon stores out there that don't have a single person in them. You just walk in, take what you want, and everything's captured on your way out. So I find that quite interesting. But I think there's always a need for human connection. So I think retail should always have that retail focus, that human focus. Technology helps organizations provide a better service, a better experience. So that's the way that I'd love to see technology embraced within the retail game, is that it's providing a better experience. I think the way technology can integrate for businesses, so they're integrating their online processes with their shop floor focuses, their processes, their point of sale links in with inventory and in online. So that whole integration needs to be part of the technology game for businesses. I work with a number of small businesses, and they almost see it like there's two separate entities. They've got their shop and then they've got their online, and they're running two separate systems. The key is to try and integrate them so that you're running the same system and you're getting the same experience. So I think there's still more to do to enhance. I think social media is still a major missed opportunity for retail stores, especially when people are saying physical retail, the bricks and mortar is dying. I think if you give if you really think hard about how you can embrace the concept of social media in your physical stores, I think retailers will have a win, whether that's selfie spots that you can have or, something. I'm sure that there's bigger brains out there than I that can incorporate that aspect of social media in the physical stores. I think that's a real bonus. But I would like to think that we will always need human connection in the retail game. And it's how we use the technology to enhance the customer experience that's going to be the key for success in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also curious to ask you about the value you place on networking because, most jobs or when you want to make a career pivot, it's not what you know, it's really who you
Yeah.
know. So tell me about your perspective on the value of networking.
I think networking is vital for anyone, well, for everyone, to be honest. I mean, there's a couple of key things that guides my networking. You obviously need to be in the right room. The people that can stretch, challenge, maybe be role models for you. If you want to be a success in a certain industry, you need to find out who those people are that are winning in those industries and find a way to be in the same room as them. Once again, Maxwell says if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, and that's key for so many people. They want to be the smartest person in the room, but that's not stretching them, that's not challenging them. So whether you're a career executive, whether it's you're an aspiring entrepreneur or you're a small business owner, to be around the people that are going to help you be your best and inspire you to take action to be your best. I think that's the key aspect for networking. The other side, of course, is that the more you're in that network, the more people start to trust you, the more people start to become familiar with you being in that room, and the more potential business that you can do with those with other people. One of the mistakes that people make with networking is that they go into a networking group or a business breakfast or a business lunch event, and they walk away with a lot of business cards but no business. And I think that's where a lot of people make the mistake. They'll show up once or twice, they'll walk away thinking that I've had no business, I've had no business, I've created no connections. It's all about building the connections. It's all about listening to other people, understanding them, and that builds trust in the networking game, as we know. And the more people trust you, the more people will start conversing with you, and the greater chance you've got of either doing business or being mentored, which is what some career executives want. So,
yeah, absolutely. And Tony, my final question for you today has to do with your own personal and professional life history and how you want that to be defined.
well, at the end of the day, my mantra is that I'm helping build tomorrow's best leaders today. So I really, at the what I want people to think in relation to me or my legacy is that I helped someone, I created an impact, and one of the key drivers for me is that I help turn the lights on. So when you see when someone has had their lights turned on and they've got that spark back in their lives. If I've got people when I'm gone that says, Tony, help me turn the lights on, I think that's the best legacy that I can leave.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, if people want to get connected with you, Tony, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, there's two ways. Listen to my podcast. That's at todaysleader.com.au. Or simply go to coachcurl.com. That's the best way, and has got all of my other websites. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn. Just do a search for Tony Curl. I'm on Facebook. So I'm a pretty easy guy to find. Just go and Google me, and I come up all over the place. But I'd encourage people to listen into how I get stretched on my podcast. I love that, and And outside of that, just coachcurl.com, Kevin.
Fantastic. You know, Tony, I really enjoyed our discussion about business diversification and how you're helping leaders of today become effective leaders of tomorrow. Your work in the space and time on my behalf are most appreciated. And I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me, Bonnie.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks, Kevin.